Mark. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
No problem.
We've got a bit of a formality at the start. I'd just like to, if you can, just introduce yourself, sort of tell us what your job title is and sort of what you do, and then, yeah, we can go from there.
I've got one of those incredibly long job titles, so it's going to probably take a while. So my name's Colin Daniels, and I'm the Working Age and Young People Service Manager for the Macular Society. I've been with the Society for about 6 years. It's cruising on that way. I started as a regional manager for the East of England, and now we've set up this service, which is sort of more targeted towards sort of younger people and people of a working age. So I started started developing that service and running it. So it's been a busy sort of 18 months or so.
Excellent. Because that's the thing. I always, and I'm sure probably a lot of people do, but I always associate the Macular Society sort of with the elderly. So that was one of the things that kind of sparked this when I spoke to you and you told me that you were working on this project with the working age and sort of young people. That sounds, yeah, sort of really interesting. So when did that start? Did you say that started within the last 18 months or?
Yeah, I started my role March 2019. So it's been a thing that we've always done actually as the society. As you so rightly say, macular disease tends to affect older people with age-related macular degeneration. But there is a small crowd of us, because I've got a macular disease, I've got Stargardt's myself, who have what was known as a juvenile dystrophy, but they're just macular dystrophies now. But so we've always been able to support people. We had a small working age group network as part of the major group net that we have. So probably know we've got over 400 support groups dotted all over the country. And there's about 20 of those we're sort of targeted at sort of working age people. We've always been able to give sort of diagnosis information, sort of patient information around sort of younger people and working age people. But that was kind of where we stopped and started really. So this service, which we started in March, was to sort of really look at the sort of the needs and the support that people of a working age, young people and parents of kids with macular dystrophies, that the support that they needed, and sort of really try and develop a service around those thoughts, because the peer support that those people need is different to the peer support that older people need.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So have you got any idea on sort of like the number of sort of people, say, obviously, it's common knowledge that sort of macular dystrophy sort of in the elderly is something that affects, well, it is the most sort of prevalent cause of sight loss. With regards to sort of working age and sort of younger people, do you know either figures or whatever in comparison to that?
It's really hard to say, but we estimate that with people with macular dystrophy, so things like Stargardt's, Best disease, cone dystrophy, the list is endless. There's sort of 50 to 60,000 people. But then if you add in people with diabetic macular edema, myopic macular dystrophies, that figure starts to rise within sort of the working age and young people population. We do know that there's around 700,000 people with AMD or end-stage AMD in the country, and there's roughly 1.5 million people affected by macular disease itself. So we're not 100% sure of the figures of working age and young people, but it is a very small minority of people with macular disease.
Okay.
So one of the problems that leads to, obviously, is that actually, so if you're a parent maybe with a child with something like Stargardt's disease, the likelihood of you coming across another parent with a child with Stargardt's disease is pretty small.
Yes. Yep.
Or you could be living next door to each other or on parallel streets and not know.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. So one of the ways we've sort of thought to get around that a little bit is by trying to set up something called a parents forum, which is a telephone support group at the moment, where parents can ring in once a month and just have a chat over the phone, much like our peer support groups, but it's for parenting sort of issues, or parenthood. And we've got a small group of people that join in every month. So if you know, if anybody wants listening to wants to join in with that, just call the Macular Society Advice and Information, and they'll give you some more information.
That's good, because that's one of the things, like we've said sort of multiple times when we're doing these sort of Ask the Expert interviews, is we want to try and raise awareness about services or things that people maybe don't know about. And just as you were saying that there, I was thinking, I mean, if the figures are that small, exactly what you said there, are people aware that this sort of project exists? So you mentioned there did you say you've got about 20 groups sort of dotted across the UK that work not just with parents, but the whole sort of the working age and young people groups?
Yeah, so there's about 20 of that, and they're so we've got them, well, sort of Manchester, Leeds, London, Birmingham, sort of in the major cities, really. There's a nice one in Stratford on Avon. That's a nice group. It's a nice place.
Oh, nice.
But obviously they've all closed down. They're all suspended.
Yeah.
Suspended is the wrong word. So they've all gone onto the phone or onto Zoom.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So they're all meeting still, but because of COVID, obviously face to face is not allowed.
Yep.
So we all our groups moved onto the phone, or the majority of them did. And actually, some of the groups, the working age groups that were actually meeting once a quarter, are now meeting monthly.
Brilliant.
The support that they're giving is actually increased, which is great.
Well, that's the thing. I can imagine, because I know it's a big thing. I'm part of some sort of social groups outside of this, some voluntary groups. And one of the biggest things that we found is sort of our elderly members, yeah, they're not sort of so engaged, and some of them just still haven't kind of jumped on the bandwagon for kind of personal reasons. But I would imagine the sort of age group that you're talking about, this is kind of right up their street. So do you see that sort of continuing? Because the frequency, I mean, that's brilliant. So from once a quarter to once a month, I mean, that's yeah, that must be a good thing, especially for something where it's so important with the support and sharing knowledge.
It is so beneficial. Especially at the moment with the feelings of social isolation, which have been increased because of COVID, and also, I mean, sight loss creates that issue anyway in itself. So if you've got the two things combined, it's going to cause bigger problems and mental health issues down the line. And there's a massive link between mental health and sight loss anyway. So if I want to keep these groups going, both virtually and face to face when they're allowed, and that's allowed to happen again. Well, what was so exciting was the fact that as I said, we've got this big network of groups, 437, I think, something like that. And 85% of them are meeting by telephone. 85%.
Wow.
That's including our older people groups. Well, the majority of them are older people, and they're still meeting by telephone. And actually, what has happened, as my regional manager colleagues have been telling me, is that some, say Mrs. Miggins, that is unable to get to the group through mobility issues, or she lives in the middle of nowhere and can't get there because there's no voluntary car service or whatever, they're now able to ring in. So they're actually getting peer support that they weren't getting before. So there's been some odd and silver linings have come out of COVID around peer support in the Macular Society, and that's one of them. My working age people, though, one of the first things I did was I wanted to create a network, because as you mentioned, there's 20 dotted all over. Well, one thing I wanted to do was get everybody talking and try and create a community of people living with macular disease who are just a wee bit younger. So I set up a Facebook group. So we've got a quite a good community. I'm looking to my right because my iPad is there, and that's what I do it on. So we've got a Facebook group, which is a private closed group which offers peer support, and you can just find it through the Macular Society Facebook pages, or just go put it into Facebook, Working Age and Young People Macular Society, and ask to join, and I'll just confirm anybody's membership. At the moment, we've got 538 members.
Wow.
All talking about anything from what they did last night to asking for advice around access to work, benefits, sort of bits of kit like you guys provide, you know, does this work? Does that work? What's people using for that? And when we had a quick chat about an app before we started this chat, and I'm going to put that on the group because I know people are going to find that very useful. So, and I monitor the group. So if anything pops up that I can help with, because my background is, I supported people into work in the past. I've done a bit of welfare. I've done a bit of welfare rights. I used to be a welfare rights officer for Action for Blind People. So I've done quite a lot of welfare rights. So if anything pops up that I can actually support people with, I'll chip in and ask them to give me a call. And then we can go through that. So off the back of that Facebook group, I've helped people claim personal independence payment, have a chat about equipment for their access to work claims. Also talked to a couple of employers on behalf of employees to keep people retained and in work, which is the whole point of this service. You know, because as I said right at the beginning, that the peer support that people need is so different. It's quite exciting that little community, and it is small, but it's growing. It grows by about 12 people a month.
Okay.
So, and it's quite a small, as I said, it's quite a small cohort of people that we're targeting. And the other thing that I don't do is there's not too many companies on it. So it's going to get harassed and harangued by anybody, you know, but, you know, but if someone's got a particular piece of kit, for example, that they want to promote, or they're looking for people to test, then of course I will always allow them to pop on.
Yeah, no, I think that's important, because that's the thing. I think a lot of the time when people join these kind of forums for anything, that's the one thing that you just want to be able to sort of share your thoughts and get honest, kind of unbiased sort of feedback and so on and things. So no, that's good. Okay.
I mean, when I was a regional manager, I used to invite you guys up to like all the time to my groups, and you know, show your wares off. And then, you know, I like them. So it's a bit disappointing actually, in a funny kind of way. My vision is at a point now where I can't use most of them, but
we've lost the customer.
but that's where we're at. But what's the other thing what I like to do is I like to work with sort of national partners as well. So RNIB and Thomas Pottleton Trust, guide dogs, all around all different aspects of life. So employment is a biggie for people that are of a working age. Maybe they might be in work, or maybe they've got an acquired sight loss while they've got a job. So we're offering support to keep them in their job. Guide dogs speak for themselves. As they do mobility. It's not just, you know, the nice fluffy animals. I've got one down here, young Woody, he's snoring as I can hear him. But you know, they do mobility training, and they've also got a fantastic children's and family service with advocacy for schools and stuff. So it's not like we're going to reinvent the wheel, because there's other organisations out there doing this stuff, but we're just making sure that they're really supporting people with central vision loss, macular disease, as well as they can.
Yes. Yep.
By providing information to those, and I found that's a really good way of working.
Definitely. No, that sounds good. What about, so you mentioned there, so if somebody's in work and they get affected by this kind of thing, what's sort of the most common challenge or concern or whatever that people are concerned about, that is kind of low-hanging fruit that you can help solve for them and make the biggest difference?
The biggest problem that most people have, the biggest issue that most people worry about, is accessing their job, but so reading effectively. You know, you put driving to one side, because obviously that's a no-brainer really. If you get registered sight impaired or severely sight impaired, driving is a thing that you can't do anymore. However, there are ways around that. But the main things that people concern themselves with is actually how to access their job. So through reading, because with most people work, doesn't matter what you do, you're going to have to read something, whether it's you know, you're stocking a shelf in Sainsbury's and having to stock the shelves up and read that, or you're accessing a computer and need to be able to read that. So we're able just to have a conversation with them about those various different access needs, whether it be through magnification, a handheld digital magnifier, something slightly bigger, a bit more robust, which is desktop, or like myself, screen reading software, where you've got to that point where you need the computer to talk to you, so text to speech. So we can just go through those things. And then off the back of that, we can then go into a conversation about disclosure to your company or your line manager, which should be, as my colleague Juji from Support for Site put it, it should be a formal, informal conversation. So
Yeah.
don't stand in a corridor having it, actually have a meeting about it, but don't make it too formal. Then you can bring in things like access to work, talk about reasonable adjustments. And they're the kind of conversations that people have with me to understand what a reasonable adjustment is and where a reasonable adjustment starts and stops, and where a work-based assessment delivered by Access to Work is, and what the Access to Work scheme is and how to access it, which, as we know, is a government scheme, which pays for those additional costs, which potentially could employ a driver. So, for example, my last job, going around for Action for Blind People, I Access to Work paid for Dave to drive to my various jobs. He didn't do anything else other than the odd bit of reading when there was a form I couldn't read with my various gadgets and gizmos. But his job was to drive me to my appointments, basically.
That's brilliant. So basically, if you're in work, there's this scheme, this government scheme, Access to Work, and anybody can obviously can apply to that, and like you just said there, make reasonable adjustments, and that's of no cost to them, like as the employee. Just to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely no cost to them. It's a free, so you get it. But it's not a benefit; it's a grant. So the process is you contact Access to Work, tell them what difficulties you're having. They'll then send out 99.9% of the time they'll do a work-based assessment, which at the moment are done over the phone a bit oddly, obviously because of face-to-facey stuff. But then they clarify what kind of equipment you might need, a support worker, a driver, look at all those things, and then give a grant, which is up to, I can't remember the figure now. It's £52,000 per rolling year.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah,
cost to keep you in work, because funny enough, it's cheaper for them to do that. Because the average, when I used to let's see, another string to my bow. I used to do Access to Work assessments. My average grant that I would suggest was about £5,000, putting support workers to one side. So for £5,000, it's cheaper for them to pay £5,000 to keep you in a job than it is to pay for you to leave that job and then for you to claim benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah. So it does make sense, and there's proof that there's data out there that shows that people with disabilities that work are more loyal to the companies they work for and actually stay longer. And as you mentioned, if someone's got an acquired site, let's say they've been with a company for, 15 years, and then they get a macular dystrophy, age-related macular degeneration, something like that, the cost of replacing that person is going to be massive. All that skill and knowledge that person's got, if they leave, that's going to be a detriment to the organisation itself. So just by using something like Access to Work to keep them employed, and flexible working, there's all sorts of things you can look at.
Well, that's the thing, and also, I mean, this whole sort of thing. I mean, it's obviously it's in the zeitgeist at the moment of this thing that people with disabilities that maybe an employer might have seen as, for the want of a better word, kind of like a hassle kind of thing. If somebody was coming to the office, this has proved that people don't need to be in the office. So if for any reason, basically anybody could do any job more or less if they can access the computer, and like you say, they can access screen readers and so on. I think all of this has proved that that people can do the work from, and like you've just said there about the sort of like the level of dedication from somebody that's officially impaired to a company. I mean, that's got to be seen as a good thing as an employer.
I think it's brilliant. And the other thing because there's been a few changes to Access to Work because of COVID, to keep the Access to Work scheme going. So they've had a really good look at it. And one of the things they're able to do now, which is absolutely brilliant. I know it's small then, because it's that you can have dual locations for work. So if, for example, if you have to go into the office maybe 2 days a week and then you're working from home 3 days a week, because lots of people are doing that kind of blended working now, aren't they? Where they might
Access to Work
will provide 2 bits of kit.
Oh, that's excellent.
But
Yeah.
so, I mean, as you know, most sort of magnification software screen readers come with a couple of licenses anyway, with one purchase, so you can put them on different systems. But if you may need a desktop video magnifier, for example, to help you support you in work, then Access to Work may see that and then provide you with two.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now that is good. That's really good.
Because they want to keep people employed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so this whole blended working thing is a real good step forward, really, and hopefully it will stay in place. As you can imagine, the charity world is the UK charity world is really pushing them to keep this this forward thinking processes in place, because this is not the new normal. This is
yes, absolutely.
So and it's going to continue for a significant time yet.
So if somebody, do you know,
access to work.
On that particular thing, so if somebody's at work and they need a particular monitor or keyboard or software, if they're at work at the moment and they don't have that at home and maybe they're on furlough and that's part of the reason, can somebody that maybe has had the equipment for a number of years, can they apply to get the sort of second home setups sorted, or whatever the right words are?
Yeah, absolutely, they can. So if you're working or on furlough, obviously furlough's coming to an end at the end of October anyway. But if now there's reasonable adjustments. Okay, so Access to Work will cover anything that's above a reasonable adjustment. So things like keyboards, monitors, desks, chairs, that sort of stuff to work from home. That's down to your employer to provide that equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They have to apply that. They're obliged to do that anyway. However, that additional software, or maybe you use Zoom Text and you need a Zoom Text keyboard, then that will come from Access to Work, and they would look at that. So what you would do is contact Access to Work, tell them that you're going back to work, but you're going to do some blended working. So you're working in two different places. Then they will do a quick assessment, probably over the phone, I would suggest, just to say what you need. And then it is likely, as long as you fit the criteria and they accept your arguments for why you need that equipment, and they're probably going to be honest, then they will provide that equipment.
That's excellent. No,
it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really good. And so we focus quite a bit there on sort of people that are in sort of work, but as you said, sort of part of your role is also supporting young people. So I would guess that you would have also quite a bit of involvement with people in education, or children in education. So yeah, can you is that a similar sort of thing? Is there a similar sort of scheme for access to schools or whatever?
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie to you, because the accessing sort of younger people with sight loss is actually quite difficult, and they're very small numbers. So what we're doing at the moment, I'm working quite closely with Thomas Pogleton Trust and their student support service, which is fabulous, by the way. We're sort of just making sure that people understand that where central loss fits into central vision loss, central vision loss fits into that, because it's quite a specialist area. So I've spoken to a few students around equipment and around benefits and what they might be entitled to because they're moving out of home. So I'm looking to, but some of this was supposed to happen this year. Sadly, something got in the way. I can't think what it was. Looking to start working a bit more closely with the universities and further education colleges to sort of, maybe I was trying to set up some kind of mentoring service. So young people with central vision loss who maybe at the end of that higher education or further education journey can then speak to the guys that are starting it to talk about those kind of things, those difficulties they may have. Remembering, especially with further education, that this is the first time most people leave home.
Yes.
It's not just the educational side, it's the social side as well. The parents forum is where we talk about education for younger kids or younger people. So we do have a series of support stuff, that's a technical term. Support resources for QTBI, so teachers of the visually impaired, on our website, which explains how they can support young people or students with sight loss, central vision loss in the classroom, in particular with central vision loss, a bit better. So that's available on our website. But this is definitely an area we need to grow and build. But with all things that I've done with this service, I've very much gone out to people and asked what they want, rather than just be putting in place what we feel that they need.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because that's the thing. When you think sort of I suppose what you're talking about there is almost like a transition, and that's the thing. I think if somebody's even if they've gone through the sort of usual route with their education, sort of DSA and so on, once they get to the end of that, if they're then looking for employment, I suppose then you've got transition. But I hadn't really thought about that, like you just said there. Once you've finished this higher education, there's still a lot of sort of nuances there. And as you say, if people are leaving to go and live on their own, there's, like you said, there's a socials thing. And you mentioned it before also, the whole kind of the sort of mental approach as well. So emotional support and so on. It's a big leap for a lot of people.
It's massive. And there's various different transitions. So you think about the transitions of life, actually. So when you get hit 14, don't you? You start to consider your GCSEs, you take options and what GCSEs you're going to take. Then you do your GCSEs, then you have to transition into college, which is different to because the support you get at high school or secondary school is a bit different to the support you're going to get in college.
Yeah.
That's where all of a sudden, you might find you've got note takers that the college will provide. And then you go through the college bit, and then again, there's another transition into university. And these are all different changes. And at the same time, people are trying to get a handle on their vision, which is probably degenerating. And also just growing up as well, which we all know is quite difficult anyway. And then having to deal with all those additional pressures. So it's a tricky time anyway. But so I'm glad you mentioned the emotional side of that, because obviously the Macular Society, as I'm sure you know, Mark, has a counselling service, where people can have some telephone counselling from fully trained counsellors, and a couple of our counsellors are trained to counsel young people from the age of 16. So if anybody has any sort of counselling or feel they have some pressures and they want to talk about, we'll talk about it in a sort of a more constructive way, and some counselling may help, then just contact the old advice and information service at the Macular Society, and they'll put you in touch with our counselling service. And as I say, it's a free service, and I'm going to say it, there's no waiting list. It might be something to consider, and the service supports anybody that's affected by central vision loss. So whether you be a young person or an older person with macular degeneration, or somebody caring for that person, a parent, for example, can access that service. And as I say, it's free. So
that's excellent. That's good. I mean, that's the thing. There's so much sort of talk and chat at the moment with everything that's going on, and like you hear in the news, people talk about how sort of isolating it's been for people and so on. But as you say there, until you stop to think about it, and obviously it's the same with all disabilities probably, but particularly with sight loss, is this thing where you're stuck at home and you want to be able to go out, but you're not sure because you've got all the sort of social distancing rules and so on. So all of the sort of emotional aspect of that, where I might get sort of wound up because somebody's getting too close to me or whatever if I'm in the supermarket, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people need to be kind of sensitive to these sort of things. I think those they've got what are they called, the like sunflower
the sunflower lanyards,
I think they're a great idea. To be fair, just to plug a little bit, we never plug anything on these, so it'll be the first, maybe last time, but we've got at the moment some free lanyards, and all it is just a yellow lanyard and it just says visually impaired on it. But we've had really good feedback because it just highlights to people, because as it's commonly said, it's not always obvious what people's disabilities are. So I think having that, the counselling service there being not sort of age restrictive. So with any, and as you said there, so it doesn't necessarily need to be the person that's got the sight loss. It can be, people, carers, or people that are otherwise affected. I think that's fantastic. What we'll do is we'll make sure, well, I'll get some links off you and telephone numbers and things, and we'll put those with this video, because I think this kind of stuff, as I said at the start, the whole idea of this is really to promote things that people aren't aware of. And I think especially now, maybe a silver lining with this, with the type of age group that you're sort of the manager of, there's maybe a better chance that they're going to come across things like this and find out information online and so on. I mean, that Facebook group, that's amazing that you've got 500 people in there already. That's, I know I'm not a massive Facebook user, but I know it's a huge platform, and it's a great resource for people. And if you've got something in common and it's something as important as this, I think, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it's a really good group. I'm really proud of it, actually. It's I launched it. It's about a year old now, I think. And when I launched it, I was a bit worried about how many people would join, but those worries were a bit misplaced, really. It's sort of built beautifully.
Just being nosy now, have you been in touch with Peter about this on In Touch? Because this would be like perfect for that kind of thing, because obviously we get thousands of views just from these videos kind of thing, but you imagine on a national scale, I mean, that is really, have you, is that part of your
I haven't. I know that Kathy Yelf, our CEO, talks to Peter quite regularly about different kind of things, so perhaps that's something we could look at doing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm quite an introvert myself, so I wouldn't want to go on national radio. He says a lot. But that's definitely something we could consider doing. He's very supportive of the Macular Society, as Peter. So.
No, that's good. And actually, thinking of In Touch, it's just sort of triggered it in my mind. I know that Macular Society fund a lot of research to do with sort of all the conditions and so on. What's the status with that at the moment? Because I would guess that was probably put on hold, but I don't know.
Well, it's I had a little chat with Jerry before we started recording this. Jerry's our research manager, and all our projects, the ones that we fund, are now up and running again, thankfully.
Excellent.
So as the universities have started taking in students again, and everyone's opening up, all the lab workers and stuff are able to go back into the universities as well. So, which is great news. And from a couple of the universities that she's spoken to, or a couple of the projects that Jerry's spoken to, they said there doesn't seem to have been any time delays as well. So, which is fantastic news as well. So I can't say they're all still on target for whatever they were trying to research, but they're still, they're not been delayed too badly, I think.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's good news, because I know that it's one of the hottest topics on things like In Touch, and just general news is always the sort of the research angle. So no, that's good. So everything's kind of as close to.
And one of the things about our research projects as well, of course, is we just don't do medical research. We do research into all sorts of it is medical, but then social research as well, so to understand the impact of macular disease on people from a social point of view as well. So it's
excellent. Oh, that's good. Right. Did you have anything else? Was there anything else that you'd like to talk about or promote, or?
Well, the only thing that I'd like to promote, just because I want to, is the one thing I have started to do, and this is actually off the back of COVID, funny enough, is that I've started to do specific condition-specific webinars once a month. So actually ask a researcher to come in and talk about, give a presentation on a specific condition, and then let people ask questions about it. So we've done one on myopic MD. Last month's was on PXE, which is incredibly rare. This month we're doing something a bit different, which is potentially Andrew Webster from Moorfields, and then in November I'm looking to do one potentially on Salisbury's dystrophy. So if people want to sort of find out more about those, they're once a month. They're the last Thursday of the month, generally in the evening. So because obviously working age people rudely being at work, during the day. So we're doing them in the evening. So please just keep an eye on the old social media, the Macular Society social media, plus the Working Age and Young People's Facebook group for those that are coming up.
Fantastic. Oh, no, that's good. It does sound like, much like everybody else, it sounds like you've got your plate full. You've got quite a few plates spinning.
Yeah. That's if I could juggle, I'd be juggling. I can't, but yeah, it is a busy. You literally don't stop, so it's really busy. And the society is just still been not relatively, been very busy through the entirety of the crisis. So we've just kept going, thankfully. It's really good.
Excellent. No, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you so much, and for all of the knowledge that you've shared there. I really appreciate it. And like I say, what I'll do is after this, I'll get some links and telephone numbers and things from you, and we'll get that out there. But no, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time.
No, brilliant, Mark. Thanks for inviting me along. It's been great. Thanks.
Hey, that's all right. And hopefully, yeah, at some point soon, maybe we'll socially distance meet. Excellent. Right. I'll see you soon. Take care.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.